If you're curious about the new film from Polaroid Originals and how it compares to the old Impossible Project film, well then this might be the most important video that you watch on the subject, because I'm going to take you through some detailed, studio-controlled test of the differences between the color emulsions and a couple of real-world examples, so stay tuned. Hey fellow photographers, what did you shoot today? Now chances are if you're watching this video you're really interested in buying some of the new Polaroid Originals film or something else from Polaroid. If that's the case, I would really quickly like to direct you to a link down in the description that has a loyalty program link. If you use this link you're going to get 10% off your purchase at Polaroid.com, so it's a win for you. It also helps me earn points which I can then exchange for coupons to get money off of film or other things, so it's a win for me. The more film I can afford, that means the more testing I can do and the more content I can create for you guys. So it's another win for you. So it's a win-win-win situation. So if you use that link, you're going to get 10% off and it helps me out as well. I really appreciate it. Now, if you shot with Impossible Project film before and you haven't really liked the quality of the shots you've gotten, you're not alone. A lot of people didn't really like the old emulsion. They weren't really, consistent with the results and the results weren't really up to par. But that's all changed with the new Polaroid Original film. The new film has better contrast, which means you're going to get darker blacks and brighter whites. So you're going to get more contrast between the lights and darks in your scene. As well as the new film has better color rendition, so you're going to get more accurate color out of the new film. The combination of the better colors and that definite increase in contrast is going to give your pictures a little bit of a pop instead of that washed out kind of look that you might have gotten with the Impossible Project film before it. Now today we're going to be testing two film stocks. We're going to be testing the I-type film stock as well as the SX-70 film stock. Now, if you remember from a previous video, which I'll link here, the I-type film stock test should cover the I-type, 600 series, and Spectra series color films. All of those three films are the same emulsion, the same 640 ISO film. So the test should be equivalent across those films. The only thing that differs is whether or not the pack has a battery in it, or in the case of the Spectra, the format is a little bit bigger. But again, it's the same emulsion. Now, on the other hand, the SX-70 film is its own emulsion. It's actually 160 ISO, so it's 2 stops less sensitive when it comes to the film. Therefore, it must be a different emulsion, therefore it deserves its own test. The first set of tests is under controlled lighting conditions here in studio. I set up a little scene with some film packs, and more importantly, a color checker. This color checker is going to give you an idea of how accurate the colors are to a standard reference color checking chart. This is the Color Checker Classic from X-Rite Photo. Now first up we have the Polaroid One Step 2, which uses the I-type film. So using the One Step 2, I put this on a tripod and set it up on a scene roughly 2 feet from the camera. Now 2 feet is the minimum focusing distance of the camera, so I wanted to be a little bit past that range, so it's a little bit more than 2 feet, but I wanted to be as close to that range as possible to see how good the resolution was right at that minimum focusing distance. If you want some of my initial thoughts on the One Step 2, you can watch last week's video, which is here. So what I did is I set up the camera, I loaded it with the Impossible Project film, shot the film, and I have a Arca Swiss mount, so I mounted that on the tripod, and what I did was I took the shot, then I went around and took some other shots with the Impossible style film, and then leaving the tripod in the same spot, I would come back after my 8 shots were done, load the new Polaroid Originals film, put it back on the tripod in the same exact spot, same exact lighting conditions, and then took the other shot. Now, what's important to note is that I kept the ambient light in the studio very, very low. I mean, it was just some basic lighting, nothing actually pointing at the scene. And that's because I wanted to test the flash of the One Step 2. I wanted the majority of the exposure for light coming from the flash. I wanted to see how powerful that flash was, especially up close like that, and see how well it auto-exposed, because this is a one-step camera. It's going to choose the shutter speed for you. I wanted to see, just based on flash power alone, very little to no ambient light, what the picture would come out like. One last thing to note is that the camera was at its default settings, so it was right in the middle when it came to exposure compensation. It wasn't, plus or minus. It was set right in the middle of the exposure compensation, no compensation either direction. After taking the shots, I let them develop in complete darkness for about an hour before exposing them to light. Sometimes, especially with the older films, if they were subject to light right away, you could ruin your exposure. So definitely, as soon as they come out of the camera, put them in a dark spot. It helps because this camera has a built-in frog tongue that protects the film as it comes out. So it protects the film, you grab it real quick and throw it into like an old empty box of film and let it develop in the dark face down so that you have no exposure problems due to outside light hitting the negative. After that, I labeled the shots and then scanned them on my Epson V800 film scanner. Now I use it in flatbed mode using ViewScan software with no corrections applied, no color correction, no dust removal, nothing like that. Complete default settings from the ViewScan scan software, JPEG quality at 4800 DPI. So here's the first set of results. As you can see, the blacks are deeper and the overall color is better. There's a nice even development across the negative for the new film, and there's a bit of an error in the development of the Impossible Project film, as you can see in the corner. Overall, the results are pretty decent, but the image is a little soft. This has more to do with the camera than the film. The picture was taken at a minimum focus distance, but it's a fixed focus camera, so it's hard to get tack-sharp images. If the fixed focus lens is set to the hyperfocal distance, then that means that the true focus point of the camera is going to be at 2 times the minimum focus distance, or 4 feet. So this is a little inside of that, but that being the case, you still get some resolution here at the minimum focus distance. Just a quick side note, if you want more math and in-depth science into hyperfocal distance and how it works, then I have another video that you can link to here. Now, another thing is the flash. I kept the ambient light low in this scene because I wanted to test the flash output of the camera. Under this dim lighting, I couldn't quite get the results I was looking for. Now, this is a very slow lens for this camera. The widest aperture of this lens is something like f14. Take that into account when you're shooting in low light. The flash may still not be powerful enough to get exactly the exposure you want. I still have to play around with the exposure compensation and do some more natural light testing between these two films. So keep a lookout for future videos with these tests. Now let's move on to the SX-70 film testing. Now, it's going to be very similar to the Polaroid one-step testing with the I-type film, but there's a little twist. Now, since there's no flash on my SX-70, you can get a flash bar, but my camera doesn't have one. I did have to use ambient light, so I actually turned on some of these studio lights, which are LED lights, in order to make sure that the exposure times were somewhat reasonable, and that color correction, the color accuracy could be given by the light because there's no flash in this camera. But I did do something a little different than last time. See, these LED lights, as they are right now, they're daylight balanced. They have a clear diffusion sheet put over the LEDs, and they're balanced to 5600 Kelvin, which is a daylight temperature. Now, they also come with these really cool tungsten balanced diffusers. So what I did is I took one set of pictures with the daylight balance filter and another set with this tungsten balance filter, which is balanced at 3200 Kelvin. So those of you not familiar with film, each film has its own characteristics. And back in the day, there were actually tungsten balanced films that were used with tungsten light or indoors. And there are also daylight balanced films that you use outside for landscapes under natural light. Since we're using artificial light here, it's important to kind of do a test between the two different light color temperatures to see what this film is balanced for. And I think what you're going to see is that this film is daylight balanced, because this is going to be a little bit yellow, and then the regular daylight balance is going to give you more natural looking colors. But it's important to know that for film, you have to buy a film that's specific for what your application is, unlike digital where we can actually set the white balance inside the camera. So for the SX-70 test, I have 3 different examples. The first one's going to be between Polaroid Originals and Impossible Project film under daylight LEDs. Those are the ones that are balanced for 5600 Kelvin. The next one's going to be Polaroid Impossible and Impossible Project film under the tungsten LEDs, balanced at 3200 Kelvin. And the last one is going to compare the Polaroid Impossible under the 2 different lighting conditions. So you're going to see whether or not this film is daylight balanced or tungsten balanced based on the color accuracy of these films. First off, we see the same trend as before, deeper blacks and brighter whites. We also see sharper images. This is because the glass lens of the SX-70 can be manually focused, so you can make sure that you get critical focus and you're not dealing with sort of a one lens fits all fixed focus scenario. Looking at the last example between the color temperatures, like I said, it definitely looks like the daylight balance gives more accurate rendition of colors. So those were the studio tests, but what about real world examples? Well, I'm still sort of playing around with the one-step 2, getting my bearings, going over the exposure compensation, trying to get a feel for this camera because I haven't been shooting with it as much as the SX-70, which I have much more experience with. So I actually got a chance to take the SX-70 to the state fair and come up with some awesome examples. So at the state fair, I was at the carousel, and one of the animals that you could ride was the zebra, and I thought that would be a perfect place to test the differences between the films when it came to the blacks. Here's the result. I think this is probably the best example I have of the improvement of the film, and it's a huge difference. So as we can see, you know, the one on the left, the Impossible Project film, is just completely washed out, and we definitely have way more contrast. And I mean, there's no better example of a zebra that gives you contrast examples here on the right with the Polaroid Originals film. And this was shot on a tripod to make sure that, you know, there was going to be some slow shutter speed. And it was a really challenging lighting situation because you have the lights of the carnival and the actual carousel itself. So even after those challenging lighting conditions, you still got pretty amazing results. So now what about skin tones? I mean, Polaroids are, you know, usually shared between friends and taking pictures of friends and family and that kind of stuff. So skin tone is a very important consideration for this type of film. Well, here's a picture of me and my sister at the fair. And as you can see, on the left, the Impossible Project is just completely like washed out, weird colors. And I mean, yeah, there are some challenging lighting things at the fair and there's some different neon lights going on, but it just doesn't make any sense. The colors are way off. As you can see, the Polaroid Originals definitely gives a more lifelike look at skin tones and background colors. Last up, I'm going to leave you with some other examples of just some little carnival games during the fair, and definitely, of course, the giant Ferris wheel. So I hope these examples give you some insight into the improvements of the new film and that it got you excited to shoot more instant film. Remember, the link in the description will save you 10% off your order over at Polaroid. And don't forget to create an account with them because then you can earn points towards your discounts as well. So they have a loyalty program where you go in and every pack you buy gets you a certain number of points and they're going to reward you. So definitely buy your film from Polaroid. If you think this information and test will help other photographers, please share this video with them. I mean, it's exciting that you know, Impossible Project has gone with the new branding, with the new emulsion, has become Polaroid Originals, and it's really exciting time for instant film. And we're definitely going to see a resurgence over the years. Hopefully we'll see new cameras from Polaroid Originals and even more continual improvement upon the film. So if this, you know, appeals to anyone you know who wants to shoot instant film or is thinking about getting into instant film, definitely share this video with them. And of course, if you're new to this channel, definitely hit that subscribe button down below. It's quick, it's simple, it's free, and it means a lot. And lastly, I definitely want to hear your comments. Have you had experiences with the new film? How do you like it compared to the old film? What have you been shooting it with? What have you been shooting it on? Let me know. Also, if you want me to do more tests, and I'm going to do some more daylight testing that's coming up, but if you have a specific test in mind or you think that you can get value out of a certain test that you think I can do or help you with, let me know, and that'll be content for future videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, as always, happy shooting.